Okay, so today we are here in my house in Buxton, and Ian is going to tell us his story.
I'm going to tell one of my first spiritual experiences.
Did this just happen recently, or is this from
No,
years
this is
ago?
from years ago. I was 23. I was almost 24.
Okay.
And I'm going to skip most of the context for now and just go into what actually happened on that day. Um, so it was a day in September, and I took a walk out to a place that became a common place for me to walk through, had become a common place for me to go for walks that you're familiar with. But I don't want to talk about where it is right now. And I walked up the hill and I was walking to the woods and I was walking out to the end of the rock. And my plan was to go and to sit on this rock for 2 hours or to have a spiritual awakening or something. And I went along and I passed through the fields and then I went into the forest. And at some point, I realized that I hadn't seen any butterflies, which was interesting because I'd been seeing a lot of butterflies. Every time I came through there that season, I was seeing butterflies. So I said, huh, where are all the butterflies? And I kept walking. And I remember it was, those words came out of me with a lot of ease. And that's all it was. I didn't think about it anymore. I just kept going. And I went and I sat down on this rock and I'm going to try to remember all the things that happened and put them in decent order, but I'm not going to be able to. But one of the first things, I was sitting there and throughout this time, there were fish jumping out of the water. And I kept on missing the fish. I would hear the sound of the water breaking, and I would hear the sound of the fish landing back into the water, and I would see the ripple effect from where the fish had gone, had landed in the water.
Mm.
But I wasn't seeing the fish. And it happened several times on different parts of the river. And at some point, a thought occurred to me that said, stop looking, stop trying to find it, and it'll be right there. And at some level, I was aware that this was metaphorical for the spiritual journey I was on, for what I was looking for God. So stop looking, stop trying to catch it, stop trying to
Mm.
chase it, and it'll be there. And um, while my walk out there had been very peaceful, very at ease, when I got to the rock, it was uncomfortable and I was kind of restless. And I probably felt sort of overwhelmed by sitting out there for so long, or for intending to sit out there for so long. So it was the first 15 minutes probably that I was out there when I'd already seen some of these fish jump, and probably when that thought had occurred to me. And also during this time, I got a text message. And so I'm really trying to focus to get into the zone to meditate, and I'm having some trouble with that. And I feel the vibration, or I hear the text message go off for whatever reason. I didn't have my phone turned off, and I thought about not looking at it, but for some reason I decided to look at it. Kind of figured, whatever, I'm not really settled in. And I sort of expected it to be one person. It wasn't. I expected it not to be much. But when I looked at my phone, I was surprised. It was from a friend of mine, John, friend you know.
Mm.
And the text said, "Hey man, is everything okay?" Which was really interesting to me because it was not the type of text message I would expect from this person. And I'm not going to try and recall the exact exchange that happened, but basically I was like, why? And he said, something just feels off. And we had texted a few days ago, a few days prior, I think. And I had kind of just left it off where it was. And it was about, we were talking about something, and he said that it was, I don't remember the word right now. Basically, sort of a coincidental.
Mm.
And I was in a place in my life where I just didn't feel like there was any coincidences. What's that word? I wish I could remember the word right now. It's a good word.
For what?
He didn't say coincidence. He said a different word.
Oh.
It was like a synonym to it.
Hmm. Synchronicity.
No. So basically, so we had that little conversation, and I was into the thick of this spiritual journey I was on, and um, I just basically felt like no coincidence. I had seen enough at that point that I didn't see things as coincidental. I saw them more as synchronicity. So, anyhow, he had texted me a few days later and said, is everything okay? And he said, it's just something just feels off, which was not, this was not the type of thing I would expect from him at all. And somewhere in the exchange of this, something started to shift. I think in my own experience, in my consciousness, and things around me started to shift, which is part of what was so powerful about this experience. And one of the things that I remember happening was I was sitting down and I was looking out onto the river, and this big fish jumps out of the water right in the middle of my view. Right in the middle of my view. It looked like it was halfway um, between where I was sitting and the other side of the river. Whether it was exactly half, whether it was actually halfway between me and the river is not the point. It was just that it was so perfectly right in front of me and right where my gaze was. So I saw this fish break the water as it's jumping out, come up, twist its body, and turn and come back down, hit the water, and saw the ripple effect of the water.
Mm.
I saw the whole thing perfectly in my view. I didn't have to turn my head or shift my eyes or anything. So I went into an ecstatic experience in this time, and it was while I was still, well, the text exchange was still going on with this friend. And at some
Mm.
point, I thanked him in a very vague way, basically saying, "Thank you. You've helped bring about an experience that I've been looking for. You've helped bring about something that I've been that I was aiming for, I was trying to do for a while." And the rest of the experience, there was butterflies. All of a sudden, there was a whole bunch of butterflies. I hadn't seen any butterflies for this whole walk. Again, all the other times I had been down there that I remember, I had been seeing butterflies. That's why I thought, where are all the butterflies on my way out there? And so while I was out there, I would say, to not exaggerate, I would say I saw at least six butterflies. I think I probably saw more like eight, or say eight would be a fair guess. And I think I got up. I don't think I really, I didn't really end up meditating because I just got kind of thrown into this experience. And I got up and I think I danced around ecstatically. And I think probably after that, I sat back down and I had seen a bunch of butterflies. And I sat down and I looked at this bush that was behind me if I'm looking at the river, but I was looking at the bush. And after this sort of high that I had been through, I just sat and I looked at the bush and I said, "God, it would be really cool if a butterfly would land on my head." And so moments later, um, I'm staring at this bush and this butterfly flies out from around the bush, curves around the bush. I'm watching it and turns and comes towards me at height level or head level and continues to fly right towards my face, watching the whole thing happen. And it gets, I don't know, maybe a foot, within a foot from my face, and suddenly I just couldn't keep my body still. And so I shifted my head out of the way, like out of anxiousness or whatnot. Like it just got a little too real. And so when the butterfly was in inches of my head, I shifted my head out of the way, and the butterfly shifted slightly and flew right by my face. I don't mean like it was feet away. I mean it flew right by. It flew right where my head was.
Yeah.
So some other things happened during this experience. Again, at this point, I don't remember. Right now, I don't remember the order of all of them. And I might be recording some of them incorrectly. I don't really know if I was up and on my feet dancing around before the butterfly thing or afterwards. That might have sent me into an ecstatic state. But another thing that happened was when I was sitting was, I think I was sitting. I'm trying to be as honest as possible. But another thing that happened while I was out there on the rock was, I think I saw some seagulls, if I remember correctly, or I saw some sort of bird, and something about it caught my attention, and I looked up at them. And then I thought, oh, just seagulls. And they went on and did their thing. And then a little bit later, two blue herons flew
Mm.
across the river. I could see them flying out towards me. They flew across the river and landed a few feet off the rock that I was sitting on. I don't know how close exactly, but pretty close, close enough that I could see them clearly. I'd never had anything like that happen. usually blue herons fly away
Yeah.
if they're near a human or if a human comes near them. These two flew out towards me and landed, I don't know, I think it would be fair to say 15 feet, maybe 10 feet off the edge of the rock that I was on. Trying to recall what other like external things happened. But I know one thing that happened in my experience was when I was on my feet at some point, I think I was just filled with gratitude and awe, like I said, an ecstatic experience. And at some point, I fell down on my knees and I hit my knee as I came down on a jagged rock. And for a split second, I could feel this sensation. And just as it was about to turn into pain, it turned into something different than that in my experience. And I said out loud, even the pain feels good. And it wasn't that it wasn't the sensation of pain, but it was like there was just a sensation of my knee hitting the rock, and then as it turned it into what would have been recognizable pain, it just turned into something different.
Mm. Mm.
That's all I remember right now. Trying to pull this all together and do it in a timely manner.
So, did you go out? You went out there with the intention of meditating for a while?
I think I went out there with the intention to either meditate for 2 hours or to attain enlightenment or an awakening.
Mm. Mm. Had you been doing this kind of stuff a lot before this experience? Like, was this
Yeah,
an ongoing thing at that time?
yeah. I had already gotten into spirituality and
Yeah.
a spiritual pursuit by the time this came about, which happened very quickly in some ways. In another way, was probably a lifelong process.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you come from what seems like a very spiritual family in a sense, or at least your mom's side.
So, what was interesting about that was I didn't really know about that. Um, I didn't know about, I knew somewhat about people in my family who had been in ministry, but I didn't know about anyone's mystical experiences.
You hadn't learned about your uncle's mystical experience before this?
No.
No. And was this, so this time was your first, do you think this was your first time kind of recognizing like more of the mystical, like, spiritual? Well, I mean, you were already on a spiritual journey, but like, was this your first time like really feeling like you were tapped into something more mystical?
Um, hmm. It wasn't the first time I had had an experience that was more than the mundane.
Yeah.
It was definitely a big one. It was a sort of breakthrough.
Okay.
And I had another one, I think, that had come within that month, maybe a few days or a week or a couple of weeks before this one. But it was a different sort of experience. It wasn't it didn't involve all the external things that happened in this one.
Hmm. So, yeah, I mean, this seems like the what your uncle talks about in the book of like the internal and external worlds
You're outing
colliding.
my uncle.
What?
You're outing my uncle.
Well, we didn't say his name, but
It's true. I have a number of them.
but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the inner and outer worlds. There's a yeah. Speaking of, that was today's message in this book, the Book of Awakening. Today's message was meeting the world. You must meet the outer world with your inner world, or existence will crush you.
Yeah, this experience was very much like that. You're referencing my uncle, and part of his experience, as he described, was a sense that you might remember his wording better since you read the account recently. But it was, he had this sense and in his observation during his experience that the external happenings were directly connected with his inner world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was like that.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what do you think that is? Like, do you think that you were just so much more present and tapped into like consciousness to be able to like what do you think that is?
do I think it is, or what? Why do I think it happened? Or
Yeah, well, what do you think? Because obviously you're in like a you're just like hyper aware and present in that kind of state.
the things that happened in the state were more than normal or mundane.
Right. That's what, yeah. That's what I'm,
So I know this isn't what you're trying to say, but it's more than just being present and then you notice things that you wouldn't otherwise notice.
right. Yeah.
Why does that happen? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm asking you like what do you think is creating that to happen? Your mind is I mean yeah, I think our thoughts and our minds are so much more powerful than we think, obviously, or know. But like, yeah, what creates that to happen?
Um, Intention is very strong. If you have strong intention, that produces effects, especially if you act on that intention.
Hmm.
Commitment is also a powerful force, much like intention. Um, and suspension of disbelief, you might say. Not overthinking things. Talk about presence, that often gets tied in with not overthinking. You can't control thinking, really. Thoughts happen in the way that all sorts of other phenomena happen in life, like breathing and everything else. So you can't really control thinking like that. But is why it's important to have a conducive environment. This is why people, if they're religiously or spiritually oriented, will go to monasteries or ashrams or just um, into the wilderness, into some sort of isolation. Doing all that allows you to look into life more
Mm.
because when you're in the world and around people, you're around all sorts of conclusions about life and what it is and what's possible and what's not possible.
Mm.
And you can't really see anything else when you're in that place. When you have a whole bunch of presumptions
Yeah.
and you have a whole mental framework to to understand and support and protect those presumptions and conclusions, nothing new can really come in. So I was living beyond my conclusions. I had been working on, I was in an entrepreneur program before that, that was a very good community run by a very good, heartfelt person.
Mm.
And so I had been working on, I already understood the idea of suspension of disbelief, and I understood, I had been working on removing limiting beliefs because I was taught that really the barrier to your success is just all of the blocks, limiting beliefs, and conclusions you made about things that are not helpful to what you're trying to do. So, and that all made sense to me when I got into that group. It was like the first time I felt like I found my tribe. So I had that backing already, and it was actually from that, it's from Dane, let's say
Mm.
his name, that I got introduced, that I ended up on, that I got into the spiritual material that I found that really had me decide to jump into this stuff.
Mm. Yeah.
So, one of the things I remember reading in somewhere in all this spiritual work was really the work of enlightenment is just to remove the impediments.
Mm.
It's easy to think that
What?
spiritual work is about getting somewhere
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
becoming someone or something. And really, when we talk about enlightenment, when we talk about presence, it's always there.
Right.
And so the work is really just to remove the impediments. So suppose
Mm.
that I was in a place where the impediments weren't there,
Yeah.
and I had worked on removing the impediments, which is largely just letting go
Yeah.
and being. Also, so I would say that's probably a pretty good answer to your question.
I don't even remember what my question was anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
But also,
well,
I
that's
I would say that
I do remember. Yeah.
I would also say that um, I've had this in my mind for a few hours after our hike and everything. Calling out God is also pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think prayer is so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's essentially that's what manifestation is. It's the same.
Yeah, and it's also pretty important to not be too conclusatory about what we mean by God,
Yeah.
because I know that if I use that word, some people will be turned off by it,
Right.
and I understand that. But when I was true spirituality and true seeking and seeking the truth is really not about, I already have my preconceived notion of God, and now I'm going to, I don't know, go and have some spiritual experience with that
Yeah.
God. If you really want to know the truth, you have to let go of all of your conclusions so that you can see what really is, so that it can actually approach you. So, yeah,
Yeah.
calling out the divine is powerful,
Yeah. It, yeah.
especially if you're also out. Like calling out yourself is powerful. Getting called out by the divine is powerful. So, if you're out and you call out the divine, that can be a pretty powerful thing,
Mm.
especially if you can keep going and sustain when you don't get what you want or expect in the time
Yeah.
frame that you want or expect.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's often a reason we don't get what we want or ask for, maybe, and probably often for a good reason, because we may not want that thing for the right reasons.
Yeah, if you call God out and God manifests in a mystical experience and you're not ready for that, that can be
Mm.
um,
Yeah. I mean,
that
I
can
think,
go bad. That can be a lot.
right. I
That's
think
all.
that's why, like, your uncle, like, if other people even in your life aren't ready to hear about something like this, or you're not ready to experience something like this, you can end
Mm-hmm.
up in the wrong place, in a
Well said.
hospital.
Just leave it at wrong place.
Yeah. The wrong place, the wrong time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of people who don't have the support, the supportive network around this kind of stuff, or don't have any like awareness or knowledge of these kind of experiences, or don't believe in this kind of stuff, if something like that happens to them, how would you, like, they have no idea
Yeah.
what's going on, and then they freak out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I I was aware of mysticism, spirituality, and I was pursuing it. I was pursuing such experiences, but more than experiences, I was pursuing just the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't, can you imagine having these kind of experiences, or more, even like more intense, and not having any idea of possibility of these things?
Part of it for me was that I had had I had had similar experiences when I was a child,
Mm.
and I never drew a conclusion on what they were. As a child, I was just aware, and I just experienced what I experienced. I didn't draw conclusions on it, and so that time when I had the experience I just talked about, when I got into that place of when I dove into spirituality, a lot of it was reconnecting with where what I had experienced as a child,
Mm.
because I already, when I went towards spirituality, I felt that I'd already had that connection in my
Yeah.
life. And a lot of it was rebuilding that connection,
Yeah.
getting the mess out of the way that had come up growing up,
Yeah. That's why it's
which is where a lot of the disconnect happened
right.
between me and spirit.
Yeah. I think we lose so much of that like just presence and the awareness. Like I think we're so much more aware in some ways as a child because
Hmm.
we're just living, we're just being. We're not having to do so much all the time and like worry about things and think about things, and then we slowly just start to lose that because of all the distractions. And yeah, and then yeah, it's just we just we lose it.
I've I've been trying to reflect on that experience and see what else I might have forgotten in it. The thing about trying to recall an experience like this is it doesn't come all in an orderly fashion. For example, I remembered something about it. I remembered that I hadn't told uh, the ending of it, just me leaving. Eventually, I walked out of there, and I don't know how long it had been. It had probably been 2 hours by the time I left. I remember lying, staring up at the sky. I remember leaving, and I remember as I came out of the woods and came around the field, was going around the other side of the river. I remember there was two girls, probably like teenagers. I think one of them, smiling, said like something like, "It's a wonderful day, isn't it? Or a really nice day," or something. And I just agreed. I was like, "Yeah, it is," and kept going. Um, but what happened after this experience was I told, at some point, I told a couple people that I was close to, um, who I had had this sort of discussion with. I told um, one person I remember right now specifically, I told this experience. I can think of another person that I feel like I must have told this experience to. And I don't really remember when. In fact, actually, I don't think I told her, this first person I was thinking of, I don't think I told her until like 2 or 3 weeks after or something, at least a week after. But after this experience, I had 2 weeks of just supreme peace.
Mm,
Not sure how else to try and describe it. Just like supreme peace. I don't want to.
like what did that look like for you?
Well, I was going to say that I didn't want to make any um, like absolute sort of claims about it. Like, I never felt any irritation or anything about anything. I don't remember. I just know. I just remember that for 2 weeks at least, I didn't. I just was in a state of peace, like
Hmm.
supreme peace.
Like tranquility.
Yes. Like just it's hard to describe because it's an inner experience, and I think about some of the things that happened. Like I have just little visions of some of the moments over that week, and I can't really put it into words. I remember one time, I don't know if it was that day. I think it was a different day. I'm not sure it was within those 2 weeks, but regardless, this experience feels tied to it because I had the same sort of presence and peace.
Hmm.
I remember getting to the porch and just taking a moment and just like looking at the sky and just being grateful and kind of offering my gratitude
Yeah.
and going inside. And that doesn't sound like anything in particular with the words, but the experience is different. You were talking about consciousness.
Hmm.
The state of consciousness was just different.
Yeah.
And I had some other things. I had some dreams and things that happened during this week. I remember one dream right now. Um, it's really hard to try and control this conversation.
Hmm.
This is not the first time I've realized this talking about these things,
Yeah.
but I'm realizing it right now as well. I had this dream where it was kind of freaky, and it wasn't all freaky, but there was something freaky in part of the dream, and it was right in my room that I was sleeping in. And I started to float off like I had died, like my spirit had been blown out of my body or something
Yeah.
in the dream. And I remember feeling my body floating away, like out of my bedroom into the sky. And I remember hearing some voices that I can identify who they were, just calling my name, screaming my name. And when that happened, it's like my spirit got pulled back into my body like it was attached to a string.
Hmm.
And I woke up right then. Um, but that experience wasn't, I didn't have fear in that experience. The dream was, you would describe it as kind of freaky. It was like there was an evil or something or a threat in the dream, in the room. And I didn't even think of it as freaky until I shared it with a friend of ours. And he said, that's kind of scary. So there was just this prevailing peace.
But this dream was during that time.
I think so. Yeah. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to come up with a question.
I can cut some of this shit.
Yeah.
Um. So, how long did this last, though?
What?
This state of peace, I think.
I remember it lasting for at least 2 weeks.
Okay. And then,
I like to think that I like to think that it always remains. Um, yeah,
yeah. I
but
mean, I think in all of these kinds of experiences, like I think you gain a little bit more of that, and like life happens
Hmm.
and just things happen, distractions come up, things try and pull you away from that state of peace. But the more experiences like that you have, and the more things like this happen, and the stronger your ability to maintain that peace gets, I feel like, through all of those, through all of these other things that happen. And
Yeah, I think it's accurate to say that that continued for a long time, and I would say still does.
yeah,
Um,
doesn't mean that you won't have other emotions sometimes or
exactly,
feelings, but
because another experience came to mind while you were asking about this. That was, I don't know when, it was sometime later, a while later, and it also feels connected. I could feel that same uh, sense with it. Part of what happens in these experiences, if you identify with the experience
mm,
of what you're experiencing, so the experience of the consciousness that you're experiencing, um, then you're on very shaky ground. What happens in these experiences isn't really about you. It's about life, existence, consciousness,
mm,
awareness. And so it's not about you. This is where words get tricky because, yes, it can be a journey of self,
right,
but it's not really about you.
right.
You're
It's,
discovering something that's more universal.
yeah,
And
you're discovering like the oneness
hmm,
of everything.
and so you're getting to you're getting to come back with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we talk about how long did this last or whatnot, it's always there.
Right.
Um,
It's just can be tough to remember that, I think, when life
yeah, and
comes back.
that's why I'm pointing to this, that it's not about you,
Right.
because what you experience isn't, oh, I'm so peaceful,
Right.
I'm supremely peaceful.
Yeah.
It's not like that. You observe, you discover something that is essential to the nature of life, or at least if you're skeptical about that, at least essential to the nature of our own being.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, it's understanding that this is all already here within us, but and we all have it, but it's just hard to, yeah, find that sometimes with everything else that happens in life. And yeah, we we grow so far apart from it as we grow up and have jobs and have all of these obligations and things, and lose sight of that.
spirituality, mysticism, is really like the scientific process
Hmm.
because it's not about you, it's not about your thoughts, it's not about your beliefs. If you're a serious seeker, it's not about all those things. You are looking at life, you're just looking at life to see what it is.
Yeah.
And when you do that, life can reveal things to you
Hmm.
that you wouldn't otherwise see or notice. And that's part of why it's important to understand it's not about me, it's not about myself, it's not about my idea of self, ego, all of that. Because that's really what happens with scientific process as well. It's observation based. You perform an action, you might have a theory, and you observe, and it's the observation that gets to say what's what. And
Hmm.
that's really just that's really just how it is with any true seeking in any aspect of life. But that's definitely true in terms of spirituality.
Yeah.
And I would say that that is true regarding anything you're meaning to do in life or any seeking you're doing in life. And it's pretty much always when we get too full of ourselves, when we get too caught up in ourselves, when we
Mm.
have real problems
Yeah.
in any sort of endeavor.
Yeah. 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 That's, I think, what I'm, yeah, struggling with right now, even. Like this feeling that I am responsible to like solve these problems with misunderstood populations and to help all these people. And it's like, it's not about me being able to like, I don't know. I think I'm just making it too much about me and my responsibility to like help everybody. And it's like me, like helping myself and finding more peace and tranquility and enlightenment will in itself help everybody else around me.
It will.
Yeah.
Here's part of how. For those for those that can hear this way in this wording, it's not your responsibility. It's God's responsibility.
Yeah.
And if you think about God, God is the all responsible one, or the divine.
Right.
So it's really God's responsibility. You might be called to things,
Right.
and that's God or the divine, something in you calling you to that responsibility. And then you become, in Christianity, they'll use the word steward, which I think is a pretty good word. It's a pretty good way of looking at stewardship. You were called to steward it. But ultimately, it's not your responsibility first and foremost. It's the divine's
Yeah.
responsibility.
But
And
so,
when people lose sight of that, we get incredibly overwhelmed
yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
because we end up trying to play God as a
Yeah.
human being.
Yeah.
And God,
Yeah.
God might be in you,
It's in
but
all of us.
as you're dealing with your human,
Right. These,
it can quickly get distorted and you're quickly trying to do
yeah.
you're quickly trying to do divine things from a place of being human.
Right. Right. It's this
Jesus said,
constant battle.
somebody asked him at some point, who is this possible for then? In response to something he had said. And he said, for man alone, this is impossible. But for God, all things are possible. Or with God, all things are possible.
So,
We miss that a lot of the time
yeah, dude, that's
because,
it right there.
and that's part of the problem is we think of God out there somewhere far away and distant and separate from us
Right. It's
and
just, sorry.
indefinitely distant and separate from us. And then we feel this responsibility if we're going to be good people
Right.
or whatnot, or be spiritual or religious people or whatnot. And then it's like we're trying to take on responsibility disconnected from the divine. And
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah.
work.
It's, that's, that's why.
And then we don't really believe in God or the divine.
Right.
And so then we're saddled with all this massive responsibility,
Yeah.
but we're not believing in the grace that allows us to handle it.
There's so much to say about this.
And when you don't believe in that, when you don't believe in the divine or God or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
or grace,
Then what
and you're
purpose?
saddled with all this responsibility,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of help for you.
There's not a lot of like positive outlook on life.
There's not a lot of positive outlook on life. That's, yeah. And also, it's like you're consciously or unconsciously, whether you mean to or not, you're disconnecting yourself from grace.
Yeah.
You have to be available to receive grace. You have to be receptive
Right.
to receive grace. You have to be
Yeah.
available and receptive to receive grace.
I think
If
I,
you're not available and receptive to receive grace, then you've just saddled yourself with an immense amount of responsibility with
yeah,
no way for the flow of life to help you
to
handle it.
get in you. Yeah. You're just putting a wall around yourself for any of that to get in. Yeah. That's why we feel the best when we're doing the things that we love or we're showing love, giving love, receiving love. Love is all we really are. And I think that is how we do God's work or whatever you want to call it, is just by being loving and doing the things that bring us joy. And that sends out this like positive energy around everyone that's around us. If we're happy and we're full of love and we're living our best life and doing the things we enjoy, that it's like a domino effect on everything, everyone around us. That's really all that that's really all that matters. But so why does the universe or God or the divine like allow all of these awful things to happen? You know? That's the I mean,
Wow,
that's a
hit me with an easy
question
question, why don't
that I
you?
think so many people ask. They're like, okay, if there's a God, why would God let these things happen? Or why would, like, I've heard so many people ask that kind of question.
Mhm.
Like, why? Because we all suffer. Everybody suffers at some point. That's part of being human, is we all suffer. Nobody wants to suffer. We all want love and kindness. But why do some people have to suffer so much, not even of their own doing? Is it just so that we can, I don't know. I don't know. And it's like other people are responsible for helping those people not suffer so much. Is it just so that we can, I don't know. I don't know. Like, why does stuff like that have to happen? I guess, for example, like people who are having mystical experiences, getting locked away in a mental hospital. Like, why does something like that have to happen?
I don't know if it has to happen.
It doesn't, right? I don't mean it has to, but it does.
I think it depends on the view from which you're seeing and understanding it. Um, I'm not going to try and answer that question directly. However,
Well,
um,
it's fear, I think, is a big part of it.
I would say that being loving and compassionate brings some meaning to suffering.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not really interested in trying to expose a theological framework for these things. I'm just not really interested in doing that. There's enough of that in the world. But what I do see is that there have been people, including highly spiritual people, who have suffered, who have endured suffering.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus got crucified at like
Right.
33. So, and Gautama the Buddha, his whole spiritual journey started when he he had lived, as the story goes, he had lived a sheltered life and was sheltered from suffering. And his spiritual journey began when he observed suffering of three different kinds, or four different kinds.
Do you think that there are people, like physical bodies here on Earth, that are sent here to be God like? Or do you think that is, we are just all God and we all can have that ability to be godlike. Like,
I want everyone to be godlike.
yeah.
That's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I mean to do my part to bring out of people. Either trying not to create cliches because there's a lot of sort of cliches in spirituality and they're not bad as such, but you know, a person comes along, a spiritual person comes along, a guru comes along, and they get asked questions and they say things that sound kind of cryptic or whatnot, and it's fine, but especially if it helps bring clarity to people, but it also just kind of becomes a like it becomes their own flavor,
Yeah.
their own sort of, you know, slogans or
Yeah.
whatnot. So, what I was going to say was nobody's God or everyone's God. What that means is that nobody gets ownership over God or over the divine. And that's the tricky part in the spiritual process because somebody has a mystical experience, they get some sense of the divine in them or not separate from them. And then they want to be God, and they might even be out of a good intention, like they want to embody that. But um, then a person kind of gets isolated in their own sense of godness, and
Yeah.
the point, and that's basically just ego, and
Yeah.
it's not ego in the way that people usually refer
Right.
to it as like
Right.
it's all bad. No, it's just that's sort of the nature of ego and separation, duality. It's
Yeah.
the that's the nature of dualistic perception. And
That's exactly what I was talking about last night.
yeah, and trying to talk about any of this stuff is very difficult in terms of not falling into different labels and boxes.
Yeah.
People start asking,
Well,
or is this pantheistic belief? Blah, 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 blah. And all that stuff misses the point. You're just, if you want to know the truth, you're just here to observe and see the truth as best as you can. And it's not going to fit into any sort of box, period. And
yeah.
trying to put it into words is going to appear to get it closer to fitting into boxes.
Right.
And the more you try and clarify and distinguish what you're saying, you're cutting up
Yeah.
a blurb. You're cutting up a
So
intangible thing.
the ego, though, that's
Hmm.
what I was talking about last night because, yeah, again, with this whole, I feel like this feeling of responsibility has always been there for me,
Yeah.
but it's grown so much recently after listening to the telepathy tapes, especially, but also after reading your uncle's story. It's
Hmm.
just like my feeling, this such strong feeling that I am responsible to help all the kids in the world with non-verbal autism or all of the people who are locked away in a mental hospital who are just having mystical experiences. And it's like, and I was talking to somebody about this last night, like, I was like, is this just ego talking? Is this just like my ego being like, like wanting to help everybody because that's filling some ego thing, some egotistical, not in a bad way, obviously, but like
No,
in a way of like it's doing something for me.
it's the ego that's doing all of that thinking about it.
Yeah. So how like
I would say people can disagree with this and whatever. I would say that it's the divine in you that is seeking to do that good.
right.
And I would say it's the ego that is doing all that overthinking about it.
Yeah.
So people's egos are different, and ego is not really a fixed thing. As much as we get into fixed patterns because of our sense of ego, ego is not really a fixed thing. Ego is just thought. It's just a thought.
Yeah.
Your ego is just a perception you have.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so that's why it's like,
Even the distinction of ego and God, these are just thoughts.
yeah. Right, right. And that's why it's like some ego, it's like in a sense it's not bad. It's just we don't want to shut off our thoughts completely all the time. That's how we create things. Everything that we have physically in this world is has come from a thought. But it's like that can also just get in the way so much of just being present and experiencing the world.
Thought is just another
Another what?
phenomena in life.
Yeah.
It's just another part of life. It's okay.
Yeah, right. It's always gonna be there.
Thought doesn't mean ego, but ego is a thought.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't say your breath is ego.
no. We've created
Thought is
the
like that.
idea of, yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, so in terms of like this feeling of responsibility, that's you're saying you think that's like the divine speaking, but then the ego is like the thought of,
I think the thought about ego tends to be ego. God doesn't think about ego.
yeah, it's like, yeah, that joke I told you the other day. Yeah, yeah,
This is why people talk about the ego so much and talk about the ego so much and whatever they talk about.
yeah. Ego death, egotistical,
Yeah,
all of these like big egos and every, yeah,
it's like the ego's not. Don't think about the ego. There's no reason to think about the ego.
right. But
It's just a thought.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, but I'm so because I guess
People expect some big thing to happen when there isn't an
when
ego.
they have an ego death,
They're
yeah,
like, I'm not gonna. Okay, if I stop thinking about the ego, if ego's a thought and I stop thinking about ego, then this big thing's gonna happen. This ego death is gonna happen, and
right.
it's
And I'm
gonna
gonna
blow my mind.
change
And it's like,
completely as a human, yeah.
who, who?
Yeah,
it's all, that's the irony of it. It's all focused from an idea of me,
Right.
and
Right.
then like projecting out, looking at this ego, or as this thing in you that you're trying to like get free of. It's
Right.
like that's at a deeper level, because ego has different meanings depending on the context we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's ego. Just let it go. People think there's like this belief that your body's going to disappear. Just let it go. Just
Yeah.
just let go of all the ideas. All because again, all these things are conclusions.
Right. But so what do I do with this feeling or this need, this like strong feeling that I have of feeling like I need to help everybody? Or like, is that,
Give it back to God.
mm,
Um, yeah, surrender it to God. Obviously, that doesn't mean, I'm taking an endless vacation. I'm out of here. It's your problem now, God. It just means
just
let it
let
go.
go of the, yeah.
It's not in the Christian tradition, in the Jewish tradition that came out of. There's some um, there's some scripture about handing all your problems over
Yeah.
to the Lord.
Yeah.
Jesus says, "Come unto me, all of you who are heavy burdened and weary, and I will give you rest.
Mm,
For my
yeah.
yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus is, I don't mean to try and put an interpretation on what Jesus is saying here and saying that's what but I
Right.
think it's important for the sake of understanding what's going on here. Jesus is speaking from a deeper place. He's not speaking from
Yeah.
me, a guy named Jesus or Joe or whatever. He's speaking from the
Right.
divine that was clearly in and with him. That's his whole story. Jesus himself refers to himself as a prophet. It's funny the things people argue. People will argue, was Jesus a prophet or was he something else? And he himself implies, or he himself implies he's a prophet with his own words in some part of his story. And well, what does a prophet do? A prophet speaks for God.
Mm, mm,
A prophet is a messenger from
yeah.
God. However you
That's,
want to perceive that is a different matter to understand that.
yeah,
But
that's,
that's what Jesus is doing. And when he says, "Come unto me, all of you who are heavy burdened and weary, I will give you rest,"
mm,
he's speaking about that transcendent thing. He's speaking of the divine, which he is in connection with.
yeah.
And whoever he is as a human being, or at least the rest of us, some people want to make exceptions about people like Jesus, it's fine. But for the rest of us, at least, whoever we are as a human being then comes out of a result of that.
Yeah.
And again, fortunately, that's a universal thing. That's not just about the person,
Yeah.
separate from everyone else in the rest of the world. It comes out connection to that universal.
Yeah. It's, I've been realizing like through this strong need, which it is like in a way it is just the ego speaking or whatever, however you want to, but of this, it's the divine and the ego, I guess, in different ways, but this strong need that I feel to like help all these people, but in that I'm creating my own suffering and my own torturing. And my friend yesterday, the other day, was like, I can sense that you're like tortured right now. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to go about this, or like
You're trying to figure it out
I'm trying
without
to figure out God's
receiving it.
work, and it's
Hmm.
like I am not God. I have God in me, but I am not God. Like I can't do all of
Whether
God's
Jackie's
work.
here or not, God's here.
Yeah.
You're fortunate you get to be in, be and live through God's presence.
Right. But yeah, but it's like I shouldn't I I don't need to suffer because I feel like I need to help everybody. Like I just need to be love, full of love, give love, love myself, and the rest will fall into place. And overthinking about how I can help all these people is just creating more suffering for myself.
Yeah, it's easy for us to forget to let go. It's really easy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's really easy to forget to just let go, to surrender things,
Yeah,
and to ask for help. And part of that's because we think that we have to do it all ourselves.
right.
We don't believe we're going to get the help that we need.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. Yeah, that's been a surrender has been a big word this past couple of years.
The
And
beautiful thing about surrender and letting go is it's really a universal principle
yeah.
through different traditions and religions. I mean, I'm talking, I've used a lot of Christian go and referenced Christian scripture here, but letting go and surrender, as far as I know, are also central to like Buddhism.
Oh
And
yeah.
really, when I started this journey a few years ago, I was really more Buddhist focused than Christian or
Right.
Jewish focused.
I mean the message is all pretty similar. It's, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, growing up, I always had an affinity for Zen. Just, it wasn't something I thought about, it wasn't something I had questions about. It just, I just received it and it made sense to me without making sense mentally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
letting go, surrender, allowance, being in a state of allowance. That was one of the things um, that the work I was into, the author I was into, would speak on. It's being in a state of allowance, that being a very powerful state and approach. And I found that worked for me. I think that clicked in a way that allowed things to happen, allowed spiritual experiences to happen for me.
Yeah.
Because to me, allowance is a lot like just being.
Yeah. That's so nice when we can just be.
Can do that now.
Yeah, you can always, but it, yeah, it's as a human, we just have this like ongoing feeling like we need to do, or it's just this society, this culture is just like you're not worthy unless you're doing something all the time or being productive or, and it's so, yeah, it's just, I think we are supposed to be productive sometimes and we need a purpose and, but,
Right. Rest and reflection is also productive.
right. And that's not valued in our culture as much anymore, at least. Yeah.
What matters is if we value it.
Right. Right. But it's tough when you live in a society that tells you that that's not
Conditioning.
valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the world is wrong about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so we just have to
part of the way to
tune out those messages.
free ourselves,
Yeah.
not stuff. That's part of liberation.
Yeah.
We want to talk about spirituality in spiritual terms, enlightenment, awakening, liberations,
Mm.
another word. And it's easy to think liberation just means some spiritual awakening, something that happens in your consciousness or in your awareness, but it's also something that results in the entirety of your being,
Yeah.
including what you, how you handle conditioning of the world and what
Mm.
you do with your time, body, energy.
Hmm. Yeah.
I still don't know if I really detailed all the important things that happened in my experience on the rock, but
Well,
I don't think I'm gonna
I think that it's
find
just a
out.
good way to start this
Mhm.
and to pave the way of enlightenment and awareness and what that
My body gets uncomfortable with the word enlightenment.
means. Awakening, I think, is a better term.
I think it's just because there's so much thrown on the word enlightenment.
Yeah, I
As
know. Now it's becoming just such a. That's what always happens. Just a word. We can create a new word
I
for it.
actually, I really like the word. I took to it naturally,
Yeah,
um, but it feels always felt very like heavy and expectant
right.
to me. An
And like,
awakening feels softer, like, oh, you can have an awakening.
yeah,
I'm still just a human being.
right. Enlightenment means, yeah, seems like you're shifting and forming into something new and becoming this. It's like this unattainable thing that everybody wants, and
Hmm.
but it's just, yeah, yeah.
And that's part of why, well, part of I, why it was natural for me, why it took to me was because it didn't feel like a messing around thing. Like awakening, it feels kind of soft and kind of toned down.
Mm-hmm.
And enlightenment's like, yeah, you're not getting around that one. It is what it is. That's how
Yeah,
the word feels.
yeah. I mean, I think, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
what I would really like to say, though, by whatever word you call it, enlightenment is a state that you can live in.
Mm,
It's not so much something that happens to you as something that you can be in.
yeah. Yeah, I like that. Because I think I've been searching for this thing and searching for like this big thing to happen, this big like
Hmm.
experience, and always seeking this, yeah, these bigger experiences. And, I go into these, I've done a lot of medicine work lately with psychedelics, and it's like I go into it fearful in a sense that I'm going to go in, have this huge ego death, like reach enlightenment or whatever, and then come back as a totally different person. And it's like,
That
no,
could be cool.
dude, that's not what happens. Like, but I go in and I learn more about myself and I get deeper and closer to myself and closer to the understanding that we're all fucking same. We're all connected. We're all one. And everything we need and everything we're searching for and looking for is already inside of us. And I learn more of that each time I do these things and carry a little bit more of that with me. And then life comes back, pulls you a bit away from it. And, but it's always there. It's always there. And yeah, I haven't, I'm still me. I'm still the same person. Just, yeah, I don't know. It's wild. Yeah, I think I'm finally starting to let go of the idea that I'm gonna become something else or become yeah, I'm still me, but more I just you just yeah, more whole.
Mm.
Wholeness is the biggest thing I've gained, I think, from all of these experiences. It's just, yeah, feeling like I don't need to seek out external validation or it's all everything's already there within you.
Do not fear. Everyone is being made whole.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Redemption,
Do not fear.
wholeness.
Everyone is being redeemed.
Right.
A very powerful statement.
Yeah.
Very powerful statement.
That is all, yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing I think where most of us are searching for. And we're trying to find our own wholeness through so many different things, through other people, through jobs, through fucking so many like materialistic things, and it's like none of that is gonna bring you wholeness.
You're never going to find wholeness in any of those things.
Anything, not even I mean, other
If you're.
people can help you get closer to your own wholeness by
Mm,
giving you connection and love and understanding, and but you still gotta find it in yourself.
If a person's fortunate, they will realize their wholeness in the midst of any of those things.
Right.
But none of those things will bring wholeness.
No. That's why we're so miserable, is because we're surrounded by materialistic bullshit that we think is supposed to bring us happiness and wholeness, but
But do you
it's
see
taking us away from it.
that's also where what we call presence comes in?
Right.
The presence is a sense of wholeness. It's an experience of wholeness.
Yeah.
Now, presence is, you could also say, it's holiness. It's an experience of the holy.
Mm.
Wow, I don't sound like anyone else right now, do I?
Yeah.
Yeah, presence, wholeness, holiness.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in presence, you're just
Don't think about it.
being.
Don't you think about it.
You're just being
Don't you
you.
ruin it for
And
yourself.
you don't have to, like, yeah, have to try or do or act or, like, you're just being. You're just whole, just being you in full presence.
There's no one to be in
Right.
that space. The you isn't me, and
Right.
then the rest of the world.
Right.
It's just part of it all. It's
Yeah.
just another piece in the whole thing. It's just another part in the whole.
Yeah.
And you don't experience it as I'm a part of the whole, so I'm fractured. You just experience wholeness because it's one unified whole.
Yeah. That was such a powerful part of my medicine journey recently, of like realizing that wholeness and then just being like, I don't even want to go to India. I don't even care about going into India, because the whole point originally of going to India was to possibly find enlightenment or more awakening or have this big spiritual experience. And it's like, you could go anywhere and have, like, I don't need to go somewhere to do that. It's just, you need to go inside yourself to do that. But yeah, having that realization was just like, cool.
Mm.
Now I can just go to India and just be fully present and just experience it for exactly what it is, and not have any like expectation of something I need to get out of it.
I was fortunate that in the spiritual material I got into, David Hawkins, just say his name now because we'll probably reference him.
Yeah.
um, his whole work was to take basically spirituality of the whole world of history and to kind of consolidate it so that it was approachable. And part of what his point was, part of what he said was, you don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
You don't have to go anywhere because it's an inner journey.
Right.
And what the truth you're seeking is always present. that doesn't even mean you have to go deep inside yourself to find it.
Right.
It means like there is no journey to make. And that probably helped me in my experience. And I know what it's like to feel still out of all these thoughts and ideas, conditioning to think, well, it's not complete, not whole, because my mind thinks this thing and that thing, and this has to happen.
Yeah.
And it'll be like this when I'm arrived, and I have to go here and there and do this. But presence is just a presence.
Right. Nothing
Wholeness
more
is
to
just
it.
wholeness.
Yeah.
Enlightenment is just enlightenment. And it's not dictated by all those thoughts or by acting out those thoughts.
Yeah. I wish I'd known that a long time. No, I don't though, because I always knew. I mean, for a while, I've known that it all comes from within. It all comes from you. Like, all starts with yourself, loving yourself.
Mm.
But I am thankful that I sought out this stuff. Think like from other places or people or things, because it all led me to so many amazing experiences. Like going on this journey to find myself and to find this awakening, like traveling around the country, traveling around the world in some sense, out of the country. Like, I was like, still brought me more wholeness in a sense.
Mm.
But it was because I could leave behind all the distractions here and just fully connect with me and fully connect with like all these other amazing humans all over the place.
Mm.
And yeah, so I'm not sad that I didn't know. I mean, I didn't, yeah, that I didn't like know that I didn't have to go anywhere to find this stuff, because then I would have missed out on all these wild experiences. But it is cool to know now that I don't have to go anywhere to find these things. So I can just go places and just be and just enjoy it for exactly what it is.
Mm. Yeah. Person just needs what they need
Yeah.
for the journey. They just need what they need for the journey.
Yeah.
And saying you don't have to go anywhere to find God, find enlightenment, find presence doesn't mean don't go anywhere.
Right. Just
It doesn't even mean that going somewhere won't help you in the process.
right.
That's not what it means.
Yeah. I think all of
And
them are tools.
that's the tricky thing with the conceptualization
Yeah.
that the mind does.
Right.
It's like if you tell me this, well then my mind thinks it means this. And it's not always true.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what I have a hard time with sometimes, is there's so many different, these are all just tools to get you closer to this place. Like travel can be a tool, therapy can be a tool, coaching, meditation, like singing, music, dance, anything can be a tool to get you closer to this place of wholeness and oneness and spirituality or whatever. So, and there's so many different tools now. And I like so many of these different tools, and I struggle with like which tool do I want to invest more energy in? Which tool do I want to use to help other people get closer to this place? And because I love so many of these different tools. I love dance, I love music, I love travel, I love psychedelic work, like even sexuality, sex, I thought about as a tool in some sense. And like I've dabbled in all these different ideas, and it's like they're all just tools, vehicles to get you closer there to that place.
You know what the ultimate tool is life,
Yeah,
and all of those
presence.
things are life.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think that's why we all, I don't know, need to find something that we can feel that from. Like we all need that kind of like thing that we do that gives us life, makes us feel alive. The world needs more people who, there's that quote, the world needs more people who have come alive.
When we talk about spirituality, we're talking about coming alive.
Yeah. Yeah. So nice to feel alive.
Yeah,
It's so nice, dude.
not very fun feeling half dead while you're alive.
Yeah, and so many of us live most of our lives that way. It's so sad.
They call it awakening for a reason.
Yeah, because
You
we're fucking
it's like,
sleeping.
wake up, wake
We're
up.
sleeping our life away, and we're not even actually like resting, sleeping. We're just like, yeah. We don't even get good actual restorative sleep. We're just like not fucking awake to what really matters.
The
Life.
story in Buddhism that when Gautama became awakened, fully awakened, some divine being saw him along the way or something. I don't remember who it was. And actually, it might have just been a person passing by and saw him and thought he was some sort of divine being or something because of the effulgence that he perceived coming from Gautama. And he asked him, "Are you this? Are you that?" And Gautama just said, "No, no." "Are you a divine being?" "No." "Are you this?" "No." He said, "What are you?" And Gautama said, "I'm awake." Just on.
Yeah.
Come alive.
Alive. Yeah. Surrender to life, God. No, surrender to God and present with life. How would you sum all of this up into, I don't know, sentence or two? What do you think are the biggest takeaways from this
I would say that
journey?
truly, if you're truly seeking, you probably can find all you really need in this.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to all the podcasts.
Yeah.
I think the reality as a human being is sometimes we need different forms
Right.
of receiving things and hearing things.
Exactly. That's the beauty of this world and how many options we
But
do
if
have.
you're truly receptive, if you're, and this is not something to compare yourself to or judge yourself on, but if you're earnest and honest and discerning, you can find whatever you need in one thing.
Yeah.
For me, I went through a lot of different stuff, a lot of different teachings, and it's good. It can give you sort of a robustness and a better understanding, which is good. It's helpful for the clear mental confusion and for your mind to understand the stuff that's been thrown at it, because otherwise you just have mental confusion. However, I would also say that I often came back to some simple things that made sense and resonated to me. And the further you stray, trying to do multiple things,
Mm.
the more burdensome it gets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's great if you can gain different perceptions of things, see things from different ways,
Right.
and uh, and can approach the ultimate from different approaches. It's all good, but all that really matters is that you get there.
Yeah.
All that really matters is that you be there. And I shy away from even saying just get there, because I think people already sort of have a conceptualization a lot of time of that, of like a pressure.
Oh yeah.
Gotta get there,
100%.
gotta arrive. And it's not really like that. It's like just
Just be.
mm-hmm. Because when you're just lively, when you be, life unfolds.
Yeah.
And unless you're looking at enlightenment like it's death, there's going to be more life after awakening.
Yeah. Surrender really is key. It's just something you can't try to do. You just have to
Not at all.
do.
Yeah.
It's like the more you try, the further away you get from it. You just, which is hard because we, as humans, like always try to do
Yeah.
things. And
There's things you can do that will help, that will make it more conducive for you to be able to do that.
right.
When you look at the system of yoga,
Yeah.
they take an approach like that, where they do hatha yoga to help move your body. And part of the reason they do it is to move your body, tire your body out enough that people can sit and meditate and be present.
Yeah.
But it depends on the person, and it depends on the time, and it depends on the needs of the person and the conditions they're in.
Yeah.
I know you can get into feeling like I have to do this thing. This is the way. I have to do hatha yoga. This is
Yeah.
the way, and it's exhausting
Right.
because it's like
You
maybe
just have
that's
to
not for
be.
you.
Right. That's something I've struggled with for so long of like thinking I need to do all of these things. I still struggle with it at
Hmm.
times where I'm like, "Ah,
I
I don't
do
really
too.
want to go to this fucking yoga class. I don't really want to,
Yeah.
but like I feel like I have to because that's how I'm going to reach enlightenment." And it's like, no, I could sit in my house and just meditate for 20 minutes and that's like probably going to be more effective than going somewhere else to all I have to do is just be, just sit and surrender and be. But yeah, there's so many things that there's just so many distractions in this world, good and bad,
You must be distractionless.
and right.
There.
It's there's a lot of good distractions too, but yeah, all just tests, all just
Conceptualization.
yeah.
That's what that is. I don't know if they're tests or not.
So again, in one sentence, how would you sum this up?
Would I sum what up?
Just our talk. How would you what is the biggest takeaway? You can condense it into one sentence. Doesn't have to be cliche or some
Allowance.
mm, I like it. Yeah.
If we want to give them something conceptual, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a conceptual thing that can't be made too conceptual. It's, I think, part of why it worked for me.
Yeah. Allowance. I like it. Yeah. So this is our first episode of Echoes of Presence. It took a wild, a wild turn, and I think a really good turn. I like where we went, like what came up,
Look at you trying to be a podcast host.
and yeah, we'll see what
Thinking,
comes in the next one.
what am I supposed to say now?
Who cares?
There you go.
But no, I do like where it went. I like the journey that we took, and
That
yeah.
was that was long.